Neck pain sucks. I know because I've lived with a spinal pathology for the last 20 years. Having neck pain is debilitating, it's irritating, and it drains you of your energy. I'm making this video because I feel passionate about sharing with you some simple methods that I've used on myself and with countless clients to mobilize, stabilize, and strengthen the neck. If you play a sport or your training is loading up the neck, it's always better to have it stronger and more stable and more resilient to avoid any dysfunction in the future. I'd like to start this video by stating that this is for educational purposes only. If you do have significant neck pain, your first step is to see a medical professional. If you have chronic neck pain, I would highly recommend getting some diagnostic imagery done. Having an MRI will let you know what the soft tissues are doing, the ligaments, the tendons, the muscles, what's happening around the spinal cord or the nerve root exits in the neck. Having a motion x-ray where you go into flexion, extension, and just straight standing will also give you an indication as to how stable the neck is. You want to work out how much pain-free range of motion you have and where the restrictions are. So you're going to go into full flexion, into extension, into side flexion, and then into side flexion on the other side. Then you can go into rotation, left and right, and go through full rotation, flexion to side flexion, extension, side flexion to flexion, and back the other way. Now it's a good idea to film these so that way after you've spent a month stabilizing and strengthening your neck, you can revisit these, film them again, and see how much range of motion you've improved and see if the training is working. You can use the massage ball against the wall. You can work up and down in between the shoulder blades right up to the base of the neck. The floor is also very good, but if your neck's a bit sensitive, it's great to use a wall because you can use your legs to control the amount of pressure. You can use the thumb and the forefinger to release tension in the sternocleidomastoid muscle, into the scalenes with the thumb. Tractioning is a great way to release tension in the neck. Now I love using a band. Here I'm using a 32mm band. You pull the band down and have it around the base of the skull, pulling you into a slight extension. The whole time when you first start out, you've got complete control over the band and you're gradually getting used to that tractioning effect, releasing all the muscles in the suboccipital region below the back of the skull and down in the back of the neck. And then from there, you gradually let more of the tractioning force come into the neck. When you first start out, you might only do 10 seconds of this, see how it feels, gradually build that up to a minute. Then you can release the band and allow the band to fully traction the neck. Now you can also set the band up at different heights so that way you can be very comfortable. I'm using it here on a ring that's adjustable so that way I have the right amount of pressure so I can relax down onto the ground. Now I get people to start on the floor so they can get a feeling of the deep neck flexors. So laying on your back, you're going to have the natural curve in the neck and then use the fingertips underneath the neck to feel that nice curvature. Then you're going to have the tongue on the roof of the mouth, the jaw closed, the lips closed, and you're going to contract the deep neck flexors, the muscles in the front surface of the neck. Now, as they contract, you'll feel some pressure, and you'll want to feel that pressure going in from the neck into the fingertips and the neck slightly straightening out. If you have a flat neck like mine and you want to deliberately create a curve, if you go too hard, you'll feel the bigger muscles on the outside dominate. So you're trying to get a subtle feeling of the deeper muscles on the front surface of the neck. With this exercise, you can build up to 1 minute holds. You may start out with 10-second holds, build up to 15, 20, 30, 45, and then up to a minute. You might find that you need to stagger that by doing 10 seconds on, 5 seconds off, and build it up that way. But ultimately, you want to be able to do 3 1-minute holds comfortably before you progress. After doing it in a lying position, you can now perform that exercise in a standing position. So from here, I'm just going to stand up and put pressure on the front of my head and feel those same muscles working. I like to also include lateral and work the posterior chain. So my favorite kind of routine for that is 30 seconds front, side, side, and back, and then coming back to the front for 3 sets for 6 minutes. If you apply too much pressure and the bigger muscles come on too strong, then it's only going to make the whole process take longer, because you want those deeper muscles that stabilize the neck segmentally at each individual segment to get stronger. Now after that, you can do some anti-rotation exercises where you hold the cranium and then you're going to try and rotate. Now you can look with the eyes to facilitate the muscles of the neck. You want to work up to doing a full 1 minute hold left and right, but you might have to have a 30-second rest in between, or you can just alternate every 10 seconds for a minute, have a 30-second rest, then go again. The next step after standing stabilization is using a Swiss ball against the wall. Now this is my favorite tool for stabilizing and strengthening the neck. You can strengthen the anterior chain, the posterior chain, the lateral, rotational. You can do it static, you can do it dynamic. Now when you're starting out, the static versions are great, so it's the same as the standing versions with the hands, only you're using the ball. Start out close to the ball, and then as you get stronger, you can move away. You do not want to rush this, you want to let those muscles get stronger over time and get better postural endurance. After you have the static positions down, then you can start to work dynamically. So you want to do slow head rotations and feel all the muscles through the front surface of the neck. You can do that facing away to get all the deeper muscles in the back of the neck. Then you can do it side on to work all the muscles through the side of the neck. When you're performing rotation, you will be working all the muscles through the neck. It's just where the dominance is and the majority of the fatigue. With any new neck exercise, it's important that you gradually progress and that you do not advance movements until you're stable and strong in an easier version. Using the Swiss ball on the forehead, you can perform flexion and extension and challenge your spine through its full range of motion. Now you only want to work the range that feels good, and you're gradually trying to develop tissue tolerance through that range of motion. Then you can turn it to the other side and perform the same movement, but strengthening the posterior chain. You can also do side flexion, left and right, and strengthen those. Being horizontal on the ball allows for more of the head weight to go into the spine. So you can do flexion extension in the supine position and just focus on the neck. And you can do prone flexion extension, where you're working the back side of the neck and controlling that range of motion. You can do side lying, where you're getting side flexion of the neck. All of these movements are great to strengthen and stabilize the neck. When you're starting out any of these movements, you always want to use a very slow tempo. And it's very important to develop the slow twitch fibers, the postural endurance fibers, because that's what's going to hold the neck together segmentally. So you need to work at a lower level intensity, 60% or lower. For some things, if you're really starting out, you need to go as low as 20% and gradually build that up. And be more focused on duration rather than intensity. So I don't like to progress anything unless I can do it well for 1 minute, and usually for 3 sets. Now, if I'm working front and back or side, there's no rest, so I'll accumulate 6 minutes. If I'm doing one particular movement and it is a bit challenging, I might do that for a full minute and then have a full 30-second rest. It really is just about trying to find a way to get the fibers to get stronger, so that way you can progress to more intensity and more pressure going into the neck. Once you've developed good postural endurance, you can go into some heavier neck loading. So I like doing the trap circles. I find these very effective. Now you want to keep the tongue on the roof of the mouth, the jaw closed, the lips closed, and you want to circle the shoulder blades around the rib cage, coming right down and back, right up to the ears, and then right down the front. Now you can start up with straight shrugs and then progress to these. Now I also like using 2 ankle weights and strapping them together and putting those around my head, going into the prone position and doing rotations. You can also do flexion extension into the lateral position, into a side bridge, doing rotations, and then into the supine position, holding the rings where the head's off the ground, the weight of the head's coming back. For neck stability exercises to be effective, they need to be integrated into your everyday movement. So your training movements, the sport you play, and what you do throughout the day. There's lots of great tools that you can use to progress further. The latest one that I'm seeing promoted is the Iron Neck that Joe Rogan's putting out there, and this looks great. It looks like it's providing a really good stimulus, but as with any tool, it's not the tool, it's how it's used. So I love all the exercises that I've been through already because they're very simple. Most people have these things, and you want to master these things first before you start to overload the neck. Now, I use a band and use a dipping belt, and I find this very effective for doing standing dynamic movements where the load's going into the neck. Now I can just increase the amount of band resistance by using heavier bands or by putting more of a stretch into the band. Now I also have a neck flex, which is great because it's got different attachments around it, and this is much better for doing flexion extension type movements, and it works very well. So these are available online, you can find these. Also there's different neck straps that have different attachments to add weights to the neck. These work very well. Isolated strength always needs to be integrated into whole body movements. The Iron Neck training product looks like the most effective tool on the market at the moment. In saying that, I would always caution people to do the basic exercises first. If you start slow and just do the really gentle exercises and back off everything that's irritating your neck, you might find that you can get that pain relief that you're after, and then just exhaust the cheaper options first, and you might find that's enough. But the worst thing that people can do is to buy a product, go too hard on it, and make their neck worse. So if you can't get your neck to improve and you haven't had scans done, get them done. Find out what's going on. Don't just think buying a product is going to solve everything. You have to do the work, and you have to get to know your own body and develop its strength. This video focuses on the mobility, stability, and the strength of the neck. But in order to get a true resolution of neck pain, you really have to look at the body holistically. You have to look at how you think, whether you have debt, whether you have emotional stress, how you breathe, are you breathing short and shallow in the neck, how you hydrate your body, how you nourish your body, what you make your tissues out of, how well you move, but then also how well you're recovering every day. So doing the exercises is great, but you have to balance your life to get optimal long-term results. Now, if you do have chronic neck pain and it is significant, and you have had it checked out and you know you've got a condition and you just feel overwhelmed by it, or you're just saddened by it or depressed by it, I'm making all of these videos to share my journey because I think that what I've developed is really good and it's helped so many people, it's helped myself, but I'm also going through the process of figuring out which surgery I'm going to be getting and looking at all the best options to transition and strengthen my neck through that. Now, I don't have a huge amount of pain, but I know how to avoid all the things that cause pain, and it is very limiting for me. So for most people, what I'm doing, it probably would be enough, but I've had to really cut my training back to the point where I really don't do too much to be relatively pain-free. I do have a constant sense of pressure and pain that's always there. It's like a 3 out of 10, but it's not debilitating and I can manage it very well. So for some people that may be okay. So if you're interested, follow along and I'll teach you all of that stuff with these videos. But also too, if you're looking at what your other options are to strengthen and stabilize, I am going down the surgical route, but I'm interviewing all different surgeons, and I'm also looking at all the other things that I can do in conjunction with that to make my neck as healthy and as strong as possible so that I can enjoy the rest of my life. So if that's something that's interesting to you, then join me on the journey, and I'll see you soon.